Hi everyone, it's Fiona here from FionaMarks.com, and I am back with a video in the series sharing themes from a reading. So if you've had a reading with me and you would like to, sometimes people contact me because they want like a summary of what we talked about. It's a lot to take in an hour and a half. And I put together these short videos to share something about the themes that came up so that you guys can have an idea of what can be seen in astrology and the way things are handled in astrology. So here we have beautiful chart. For those who haven't seen this kind of chart before, we always have Aries in this second box on the top row, Aries and Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. So the zodiac stays still in this chart, and that's why we don't even need to write it down. And so then we just need to check in with the main other things that are going on in the chart. These little letters represent the planets. So MO is for the moon, JU for Jupiter, SA for Saturn, and with RA for Rahu in Libra. Rahu is an eclipse point. You can't see it in the sky, but it is considered to be important in Vedic astrology. Then SU for the sun, and we have got ME for Mercury, VE for Venus, and MA for Mars, before the final thing we want to talk about is KE for Ketu, which is the partner eclipse point to Rahu. So they're always 180 degrees away from each other. All right, and then the only other thing we need to know to refresh our memory of how to read these charts is that these numbers relate to the houses. So this is the ascendant or rising sign here in Scorpio. And then we have the second house, third house, fourth house, going all the way around clockwise, just like the zodiac signs. And the houses relate to the area in your life where the karma is most likely to play out. So it tells us the stage on which these dramas will take place. And there are many beautiful things to notice about this chart, and we've got some great things to share today, but let's just have a quick orientation to some of the main things that are happening in the chart. First of all, we can notice that this is a Scorpio ascendant. Now, for all Scorpio ascendants, not just this chart, Mars becomes the rising sign, and Mars shares the rulership of the first house and the sixth house. And that is exactly the same as Taurus. They also have the same planet ruling the first house and the sixth house, although in that case it's Venus, whereas in this case it's Mars. But for both Taurus and Scorpio, we can say that in some ways there is a tendency to become one's own worst enemy, because the planet that is ruling the first house is also ruling the sixth house of delays and debts and enemies. So we can become our own enemy and make things a bit more difficult than they need to be. With it being Venus and when it's Taurus, then the first sign is with a bull, and we think of Taurus perhaps as being stubborn, right? We've got that bull energy. With it being Mars in a water sign in Scorpio, a moksha house, the person can dig into emotions and emotional problems or psychological things, maybe not be able to leave them alone. You know, Mars, that fire energy in that inner emotional world. So has slightly different flavor, the 1-6 combination between Scorpio and between Taurus. But that's something to note. Another thing for all Scorpio ascendants we can note is that Saturn is ruling the third house of effort and the fourth house of one's inner contentment. So sometimes we can associate that emotional turbulence of Scorpios with having Saturn ruling that heart center. And then other things to notice is perhaps that In this chart, beautifully, the moon is in its own home in Cancer here. So the ninth lord in the ninth house, it's a very dharmic combination, very spiritual combination, perhaps giving one that ability to tap into intuition, to tap into knowledge in an intuitive way. And then another thing to notice about all Scorpios is that the sun rules the 10th house of Leo. So it's a natural character to have the sun as the 10th lord. They're the combination that loves to go together. In this chart, the sun is in the 12th house, and it's in Libra as well. So there's a couple of indications there. The 12th house is a very hidden and secret house. And it's also that house of transcending, that it's the doorway between the material world and what is beyond. So it's hard in some ways to access when we have our 10th Lord, that is our most visible Lord, our Lord of activity that we do outside of the home in the 12th. It can be a little bit hidden from others, perhaps indicating working on the internet or working away from the marketplace, working behind the scenes. But also because the sun here is in Libra, that's actually a place that the sun finds a bit difficult to be in, because that is the beginning of the sun, the days getting shorter if you live in the northern hemisphere. So it's right at that equinox when the sun first begins to have shorter days in the northern hemisphere. And when the sun is in that position, the sun's quality of being steadfast is perhaps a little challenged in that space in Libra, and therefore just the normal changes and unsteadiness of life have a correlative effect on the person, and they might feel that they're not as steadfast as they could be. They might feel that they lose that sense of self-assuredness. And perhaps that makes them a little more susceptible to what's going on around them, what other people want to do, the desires that are going on, the social trends, rather than on being able to follow that guiding inspiration of the sun. So that's a little overview of some of the main things that are happening in a Scorpio ascendant chart, but also some specifics that are happening here. This is a beautiful chart for us to speak about yogas, which are in Vedic astrology. There are many, many yogas that they call named yogas, combinations, particular combinations of where planets are at, and they give it a name, and astrologers traditionally learn them and would just look at a chart and see those patterns straight away. So my teacher, and if you're already on the Asheville Vedic Astrology Apprenticeship Program, he teaches more to see the patterns, not necessarily to learn the names, but to see how those planetary patterns are affecting each other and why they work that way, rather than necessarily the name itself. So let's have a look at some yogas with this chart. Now, first of all, we can have a look. Let's have a look at this very first house of Scorpio. And we've got 3 planets there. We have Mars, which we just briefly spoke about, is the planet that owns Scorpio. It also owns Aries. And it is with Venus and Mercury. Now, Venus is a benefic planet, and Mercury can be both, depending on who it's with. So in this case, I'm going to show you yogas relating to both Mercury as a benefic and as a malefic. One of the things that we could notice straight away is that having a mixture of benefic and malefic planets on the ascendant is going to mean that people can see both of those qualities at the same time. So this might be someone who can be seen both. People pick up on that goodness and the sweetness and all those attractive benefic qualities. But they may also pick up on that there's a malefic in there, that this person has some grit and has some tenacity, has some fire. So that, that makes for a rich, people perceive this person in a rich, complex, they can tell that they're a rich and complex person. And having Mars on an angle in its own home is a named yoga, a radiant yoga. And this person is indeed this way. But let's read what a radiant yoga is: that they are sharp and focused on doing good. They are energetic in what they do, and they're able to overcome challenges. And they learn how to free their minds from all limiting concepts and discover what is. So what a beautiful placement of Mars on the ascendant in its own home there, and certainly describes something about this person. And there's another really interesting thing about the placements of these planets here, which is having Venus there in between. If we wanted to call Mercury a malefic, which we could do because it's with a malefic and it's right next to a malefic, so it's kind of squeezed in between a little bit. We could say that Venus there is squeezed in between a couple of malefics. And this is another yoga as well that indicates perhaps challenges to the marriage, unhappiness in marriage, and that experience will inspire the person towards spirituality or to another inspiration. It leads to a detached attitude towards their marriage, and perhaps their marriage will play a secondary role in their life compared to other greater things that they hope to accomplish. Now, this doesn't mean that they don't have a marriage or that they're not a good spouse, but that their happiness is not, in the end, related to their marriage. They don't get their happiness necessarily from the spouse. So that's an interesting yoga in this mix. Other things that are going on right there are having two benefics. Well, actually, we'll get to that in a moment. Let's just talk about, let me just check that I've said everything I want to say about that. Yes, Venus. Right. Okay. Now look at this lovely thing that is happening here between Scorpio and Leo. These guys are on an angle to each other. And that is really nice because all the benefics are on angles to each other. So we've got Jupiter and Venus on an angle to each other. And if we want to throw Mercury into that mix, also in that. So this gives indications that if there's wealth that's coming in, because it's the benefics on the angle, it's more around cash and money rather than around property and fixed land-based assets. Another thing that's going on there because of this combination, is that we have the fifth and sixth lord. So we've got Jupiter, the fifth lord, and Mars, the sixth lord. They are on angles to each other. And this supports the self-employment of this person and frees them from having to perform service. So in a way, it uncouples them a little bit from that duty to work. So another yoga going on there, fifth and sixth lord on angles to each other. Another yoga is having Jupiter, a benefic, alone in the 10th house. And that talks about the good deeds. The 10th house is our activity, what we're known for, what we do. And having Jupiter there all by itself will give a focus on performing good deeds. And that is backed up by also Mars is in that own home first house yoga. That's also good deeds. And then having these two benefics. So a real sense of goodness for this person. And another indicator for that is the sun and moon are also on angles to each other. And not only that, the sun is the 10th lord, meaning that one's actions, that is the 10th lord, will be aligned with one's emotions and with one's what one feels motivated to do. So actions and the way one feels about oneself will be aligned. So there's a lot of factors pointing to the core goodness and good deeds of this person. And that is balanced by a different yoga. And that is, let me see if I wrote it down here. Yes. Can you see Rahu and the Saturn here in Virgo? When we see Saturn, the fourth lord, because it rules Aquarius, with Rahu, this actually indicates that there's a lot going on inside the person psychologically and emotionally, that because the fourth house, we talked about the 12th house being a hidden house. The fourth house is also really hidden because the fourth house is the part of the earth that was underneath you when you were born. You know, the stars that are there in the fourth house are the ones that are underneath the earth when you're born. So it's an extremely hidden house. It's our emotions, it's our heart. And this can lead, having this combination of Rahu and Saturn with the fourth lord can lead to having negative thoughts about the self, negative emotions about the self that are hidden even from the self. And because of that, they are hidden from others too. So there's a lot going on that is going on inside the person. So that can take time in a lifetime to know how to deal with that well. So I think this is a tension that's going on in the chart, so much motivation to do good deeds, and yet this inner turmoil of negativity inside the self. And other things to notice are that there is an enormous amount of yogas for foreign lands here, and we just go through them all. I think there were 4. The 7th lord, Venus, is in the 1st house, so the 7th being the furthest away from where we were born. The 12th lord, Venus, is also in the 1st house, the 12th being distant foreign lands. The 9th lord in the 9th lord of long distance travel, and also having the 10th lord, what we're known for, also happening in distant lands. So a lot of indicators for distant lands, but also a lot of indicators for spirituality, for evolution, development. We've got, as we mentioned, the 12th lord, which is the house of liberation, is in the 1st house. So and then Scorpio itself being a sign of liberation. So very much having the opportunity with these tensions between the core fiber of this person around good deeds, the inner demons that are happening there with the negativity, being perhaps that friction, you know, the grit that makes the pearl, that really promote spiritual seeking and looking for, with that 9th lord, the moon in the 9th house, a real openness to the intuition, spirituality through intuition. So here we are, some wonderful themes from a reading, a great chance to explore with you yogas from Vedic astrology. If you're interested in learning about how to use yogas, the Asheville Vedic Astrology Apprenticeship Program that is on teachable.com has a unit devoted to yogas and how to not only see them, like how they're made, but how to evaluate them and whether they're going to bring good results and how potent those good results are going to be, and whether they're going to bring negative results and how damaging those are going to be. So I will put the link for Teachable in this video if it's something that you would like to learn more about. It's wonderful to speak astrology with you, and I look forward to sharing more themes from a reading with you soon. All right, until then, take care. Bye.